Welcome to the discussion on how crypto adoption will boost job creation in India, powered by WazirX. To help us discuss this very important topic today, because job creation is very important for India to become a $5 trillion economy, we have Siddharth Menon, who's co-founder and chief operating officer of WazirX, and we have Tanvi Ratna, who's the founder and the chief executive officer of Policy 4.0, which is a policy advisory firm in the emerging tech space. Thank you so much, Sid and Tanvi, for being here today with us.
Thanks, Ab.
Same, my pleasure.
So even as I begin, Tanvi, I wanted to ask you now, especially from Policy 4.0's perspective, y'all do research, y'all do advisory in this very important space. How do you see the blockchain solutions ecosystem or the scenario really in India today? Do you see usage exploding? Because we've been hearing about blockchain for a while now, and we know that certainly there are a lot of pilot projects, a lot of use cases also, right from the State Bank of India, which has a huge implementation, to the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, which is trying to try to fight spam, etc. And there's huge potential, right, when it comes to food supply chains, pharma supply chains, and all of that. So how do you really see the blockchain solutions ecosystem in India currently?
Yeah, thanks, Amor. I think that's a great question. I think really what works well for blockchain, and at Policy Guru, we've been working with government throughout, right? So with state governments, with agencies at the center, with a whole variety of players who are in the public sector. And I think there are fundamental features of the blockchain which make it very useful for public sector, right? So one of them is the immutability of the chain. And I think all of us are aware that tampering of records and these kind of issues are a very rampant problem across public services. So the immutability is something that it's been very hard to achieve with a lot of other means, where even people who are internal administrators of systems can often tamper them as well, right? So this is a very big feature. I think the other piece that's very useful is it allows for network effects, right? So you can create workflows where you have multiple people collaborating, multiple agencies even collaborating on the same issue area, right? And they can do it in a sort of trustless way, right? So these are very useful things. And we've seen a wide variety of them. I think definitely some use cases are famous from, when Andhra, Telangana, were experimenting with land records and things like this. I think one of the more exciting projects, which is quite underrated, I think, for the scale at which it is being built, is in the Tamil Nadu government. That's, a team we are very proud of as well. I think Mr. Mishra is one of the finest IAS in our country today. And they are building pretty much a statewide infrastructure where it's called the Nambika Nayam, which is the trust. It's a backbone of trust for the state government services. And they are basically using the blockchain for its ability to duplicate records, right? And create, like I said, across different agencies, very efficient workflows, right? And manage credentials and things like that with in a very secure way, right? So I think that project is going to be quite exciting. That's actually one of the few full-scale projects in India. Many others were pilots. And I think they will also, they are also in talks with METI, and I think they will probably lead the charge in further state projects that will happen in this. I think also on the finance side, there's been a lot of interest. I mean, the RBI itself has experimented in trade finance with blockchain and some other areas of blockchain. And I think there's always been support for that within the government.
I think you really managed to bring out, especially I think Tanvi, how the government is using that. I think that is very key, because I think that's what really benefits society. Sid, I wanted to ask you about the same question, but I also wanted to slightly look at it from the entrepreneurship perspective, because you're an entrepreneur, you co-founded WazirX, and you're also an angel investor, etc. Now, India has the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. So from your perspective, as somebody who's part of this the startup ecosystem. How does the blockchain ecosystem look like? And do you really see massive growth, both in use cases as well as in the number of companies who are coming up in the blockchain space? Not just, I mean, y'all are obviously one of the largest when it comes to application of blockchain, which is crypto. But as Tanvi said, there are so many other areas where blockchain is being used. So how do you see the blockchain ecosystem growing?
It's for an entrepreneur, the biggest thing is opportunity, right? And if there is an opportunity, there is a lot more startups coming in. And when we look at the whole the blockchain space and the whole crypto space, and for me, it will be all together, right? Like, so there is blockchain as a technology, and crypto is the whole ecosystem that we are trying to build. Let's go back, like in the dot-com times, right? Like in 2000, what were we doing, right? We were trying to build, take all the business online. So we were thinking about taking shopping online, reading online, meeting people online. It was all about taking anything online, right? And sadly, during that time, India missed out big time back then. We were very small. We did not have access to internet. A lot of entrepreneurs did not have access to internet. It was very a small penetration there. But today, when you look at it, the internet itself is evolving, where we are going to spend more time on your devices, right? That itself means we are right now living in a so-called as metaverse, right? The space. There is a lot more opportunity that is opening up, right? And that's where the whole crypto, decentralization, all those things are coming together, where it's kind of forming a metaverse where we are talking about you're a citizen of the internet, right? And this is something that's been happening slowly, and we are all into it, and we don't realize it how big this is going to be. When it comes to that, there's a lot more opportunity for everybody, and basic problems to complex problem has to be solved, and at a very global level. When we talk about decentralized finance, for example, that is an industry by itself, which has been just born like 2 or 3 years back and has been thriving really big, right? And there's a lot more opportunity for everybody to get started. From an entrepreneur point of view, as an investor, when I've been following up with people like probably 2017, 18, I see a lot more projects coming from India in last 2 years, and it's just growing big. And it's amazing to see a lot more talent, trying to capitalize on this opportunity of building something for the future. And they start with probably a simple problem, and then they probably evolve into something more complex. And ultimately, there's a whole world that is consuming their product. I feel very proud, right? Like when you have a lot more products coming from India and serving outside. So this, in my opinion, could be that opportunity which we sort of lost probably during the dot-com boom, where you had the Amazons and the Googles coming in. Maybe here is where if we all work together, maybe the next Google could come from us, from India. And this is my hope, looking at the landscape that is shaping up, even the skills and everything around it that is shaping up. It's fantastic. There's a lot more collaboration that is happening even at the entrepreneur level. It's a very small circle, right? Everybody's helping each other out to make sure we are building an industry which is for the future. And this is in spite of all the regulatory uncertainty, not knowing where it will be, and still you have these folks who are like standing up and trying to build something for the future. And this is not just a decentralized finance I'm talking about. And these are all consumer products to begin with, right? A whole lot of industry that is there in the enterprise world where it's purely blockchain specific, it's solving a lot more problem. And there's a lot more people who are involved in it. Even like what Tanvi said, right? Like folks who are really involved in the public sector, trying to build solutions around for the government or for a big institution there. But even in the consumer space where we are talking about the whole internet, there's a lot of action happening. So for example, NFT, which has been just something that is now catching up as a trend, you can see a lot more projects from India within just 3-4 months. I can see a lot more projects from India coming up and, sort of solving problems for NFT space and different problems, like whether it's NFT finance, whether it's NFT marketplace, and I know NFT games, many things like that. It's all coming from India. And even when you talk to people outside, there are big fund houses. They're all interested in projects that's coming out of India, and specifically because of the sort of the talent and the problems that we're all solving very collaboratively is actually making a big impact in the whole internet space. And I'm really looking forward for this, right? And there's a lot more opportunities just getting started. And I just hope that, the next big thing comes from India. And this time, India doesn't fall back like how it did in the dot-com time. Especially because we have the level playing field. Everybody has access to internet, and even at WazirX, we have seen we have more people from tier 2 and tier 3, which is very surprising, right? Imagine thinking like this probably in 2000 is very difficult. So there's a lot of opportunity for everybody, and I really hope that we all grow together in this space.
Absolutely, Siddharth. I think definitely there is a lot of opportunity. I know it is largely a level playing field. I remember back in 2000, right? I mean, while the world was going to the dot-com boom, the internet in India was still largely, today I think mobile phones really and 4G have really helped India narrow that gap or actually bridge that gap, right? And definitely, I also hope that the next big thing will come from India. Tanvi, now, this is obviously a very, very optimistic scenario. It sounds like, we are on the cusp of something when it comes to blockchain, crypto, etc. Now, how do you see these trends, right? These extremely bright trends, these extremely positive trends, really boosting demand for people with blockchain skills? And do you see that how do you see the demand for people with blockchain skills really compare with the state of the general job market for, let's say, software developers and IT services companies, etc.?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, I mean, I very much agree with everything that Sid said. I think this is really a sort of golden opportunity from India. I think our developers are proving it, with the kind of projects we're seeing coming out of here. I think right now, if you see the job market, it's going up, right, everywhere. Like whether it's just IT hiring or all the unicorns that were minted on a hiring bench. In manufacturing, job growth is up. Job growth is up everywhere because the Indian economy as a whole is sort of recovering, right? But what's unique about blockchain, and I would specifically say crypto-based jobs, right, is their decentralized nature, right? So what happens is immediately you're no longer having, like even for policymakers, there's a burden in creating job demand, right, in your economy. Like you have to really spur sectors, you have to throw in subsidies, you have to like push certain incentive schemes so they start really investing and doing capital formation, right? So the benefit with crypto is it's a fully decentralized economy. So what happens is you immediately tap into global demand, right? You immediately tap into a global marketplace, and that marketplace is growing like there's no tomorrow, right? Because there's now you've already heard of large institutions getting into the space. You already see Wall Street getting into the space in a big way. You see like merchants, retailers, payment players, all of them getting into it. And with them, the actual retail sector will also slowly, once the regulatory frameworks are more and more defined, they'll also start getting into it. So this immediately creates a massive global demand for crypto savvy talent, right? Whether it's in engineering, financial services, legal services, all of that. That's the kind of macro condition that as a policymaker, you can't manufacture, right? And I think that's something that any savvy political leader or any kind of savvy policymaker will figure out how to capitalize on, especially since we are sitting on this massive talent pool, right? Which is so primed for a movement like this, right? But then, of course, there are risks to it, and there are ways to mitigate that risk. But I think this is definitely it's a kind of opportunity that you would just be foolish to let go, right? Because you can't influence the world to create better conditions for job growth and capital formation.
These are great conditions for job growth, and it's like land is fertile really, and here's the opportunity. Since you lead WazirX, which is a crypto firm, and I want to slightly move away from just blockchain to talking specifically about crypto. So what are some of the kind of jobs that are available in your kind of companies? And definitely now we all know that y'all are tech driven companies, and y'all will be looking at tech driven roles, in data science, etc. But also, what are the kind of roles available in tech, but even beyond tech, right? When it comes to roles in marketing, in content, compliance, risk, etc. What are some of the roles that are available?
Yeah, I mean, there are a plethora of roles actually. And, I've been an entrepreneur since almost 17 years, right? Like right after college, I should do this. A tech entrepreneur for that matter. And working in the space has been very different. How? Okay. So one is obviously the tech by itself. You have a challenge in terms of learning what's happening. Things are changing on a daily basis. So when we are talking about tech, so tech is the core of the whole revolution that is happening. But things that I've never done in the past was or understand in the past was compliance, right? These are things that I never thought about it. But we realize, okay, you're working in an environment which comes within very close proximity of compliance, right? And how it works and how compliance work. These are things that you have never thought about when you're working in other tech areas. So this was completely new to even understand how that happens, which also opens up a lot more opportunity for compliance folks, right? People from the compliance background. Then there is obviously finance, and even though it's a fintech product, there's a lot more fintech accounting or the finance part is really different than what we have seen in a regular fintech startup, because we are dealing with cryptos and the way you handle cryptos, the way you many things around it. So if you think about it, like there's a lot more opportunity for somebody from the finance background to play a role there. Now, something that we never thought about, and we realized that's a very important role to play, is the education itself, right? And in the sense, when I say education, we are talking about building an industry. People don't know about where it is, right? We have to spread the right awareness, and right information has to be shared. And that's when we started heavily investing in education, right? And which means the whole editorial team, everything around it. And people from the editorial background have a very big opportunity and a big responsibility in this industry to basically build it out, by sharing the right content, by sharing the right, structure of how things work, and sort of try to reach out to as many people as possible in their language. So the list just goes on, right? Like, so it's an industry that is just getting started, and there is a role for everybody, right? And when how we were hiring is very difficult. We had a lot of people coming on board, and the moment he said, I have this skill, and I was just trying to map it up and say, you know what, this guy can help us here, which I never thought about before. And we just got them in. So this is how we were forming team, because we are setting the standards at this point as we go, right? For what a crypto company should be like. So, immense opportunity for a lot more folks to come on board. I was talking to somebody from social media, and I was telling her, how things can change for you here. A compliance background who's probably was into completely different compliances, and I said, hey, this is something that is a little different, and the challenges here are completely different. And she was completely shocked to look into it and said, oh wow, this is an amazing opportunity for them to jump on board. And she did that, and that's great, like to see people actually seeing this as an opportunity to build on top of it. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for everybody, whether it is a tech side. When we talk about tech, there is machine learning, data scientists, all those things, which obviously goes without saying. But then the non-tech side of things are like finance, compliances, economics, by the way. So a very important part of building a crypto product is and a regular product is, right? Before it was all about simply find a solution for a problem. But today you are building a crypto network, right? The entire network. So there is a whole incentive program that we have to build, think about. So for that, you need an economy to build on top of it. How do you incentivize the right people so that the network grows big? And suddenly I realized, there's a very high demand for economists, right? Like product economists, right? And I've been looking for people who can help in those areas to actually structure these things out. These are things that is just built, born out of nothing, right? These are like requirements that we we were able to do it, but I think there are many experts who have been doing it in different areas, and they are really needed at this space where they can actually add more value and help create a better ecosystem there. So yeah, a lot of opportunity for everybody there.
Absolutely, Sid. So clearly, these trends that we just spoke about, these extremely positive trends, are really driving a lot of, leave alone junior, even mid-level and senior tech experts, compliance experts, risk experts, finance people, and of course, crypto enthusiasts, right, into this space. Now, leading on from that, I had a couple of questions. What are the remuneration levels, right, and the growth opportunities, and are they better than in plain vanilla IT services? Because that is what has traditionally led India in the last couple of decades, right? India hasn't been, and I think that was again the point that we alluded to. India missed that big opportunity, right? We became an IT services nation while the products were still made in the US, and we just developed the application services around that. How are the remuneration level? Like, what is the growth opportunities? Like, and obviously, I think satisfaction levels also would come in there. And would that also mean that there are better opportunities for wealth creation, right? Like ESOPs, etc., in this high tech crypto and blockchain driven companies as compared to the general IT services companies?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, things are being reimagined when we are thinking about the whole blockchain space, and like bettering your skills around whatever you're doing, right? So when it comes to skill, obviously a lot more challenges there. We are talking about people who have to be, at the cutting edge where they are able to lead this. We are talking about senior people who have worked in an innovative environment where they can have the right people to always drive more innovation. Right. So the framework for innovation has to be set by the leaders there. And then you have the folks for the team who is actually leading the innovation there. So everything goes hand in hand. So when it comes to upskilling, we know that, and it's an established part, right? Like there is a lot more demand in this industry. There is so much demand because there's so much has to be solved. So everybody is just getting started here. And I think there's a different lag there, right? Like where the demand meets the supply. Same thing happened in the dot-com times, right? If you've been following that era, people who have upskilled themselves to the whole internet or how to work on the internet, build products on the internet, obviously had like an exponential remuneration as they progress for years, until it became like a norm for everybody else. So I think it comes with any new industry that is born, and especially an industry that's quite big. Like when we talk about this more at a global level and not at a very localized level. So the demand and the remuneration should follow up and should help get more people onto this industry. And also, like, like I said, right, we are all rethinking how things work, right? For example, ESOPs, right? ESOPs is a security, basically a shares in the company. But when we are creating a decentralized application, right, it's on the network. And usually how it works is the team that is building the network is usually the fire starter in this whole ecosystem, right? They just create this network. And after that, the economics plays it such that other players, take the network to the other level. Just to give you an example, just to simplify things, right? Like when a typical example is the Ethereum network, right? So it was started by Ethereum Foundation. Yes, they're the ones who are more or like the gatekeepers who basically fund, people to, improve the, Ethereum protocols. Now, what they have done is they just started that, they just fire started it. But now what has happened is the network has grown really big. And on top of that network, really big projects have been hosted on it and running on it. So the overall value of the Ethereum has gone up by, exponentially up from where it started. And instead of looking at ESOPs, the people who are working in this network, they usually get a pie of these network, right, when they get started. And as the network goes, your value of your pie actually becomes really big. And that's a very, very great model to look at it when you are building something so decentralized as a community, which probably have not seen something like this anywhere else, right? You have typically only an organization which has, shares and doing this. But how do you rethink when you want to build something on the network layer, on the decentralized layer? So these are incentive models that has worked really well and have to be reimagined, when we look at these things. So if not ESOP, you have this as a very important play. where a lot of entrepreneurs are building these networks, building these decentralized product, which has its own tokenomics, which basically incentivize not just for developer, the team, but also the consumers who are using these products. So overall, it's a network effect that we call it, right? Like it has a very good network effect, which ultimately increases your value as you work on it.
That's really fascinating to know, sir. How you're looking at even ESOPs and looking at that entire model and transforming it into the the kind of companies that you're building, right? I mean, wherein the DNA of those companies is even in when it comes there in the remuneration structures, etc. Tanvi, I wanted to ask you, we've spoken a lot about skills and we've spoken about specific skills, we've spoken about remunerations, etc. Now, what should people really do to upskill themselves in this area, right? And again, I guess one of the things that's happening in the overall technology arena when it comes to coders is there's a lot of automation coming in areas like testing, etc. And there are even, to some extent, there are job losses and all. So how can some of those people really upskill themselves so that they're ready for careers in blockchain and cryptocurrency, etc.? And from a policy level, what needs to be done in this arena?
I think the first thing people need to do is, as Douglas Adams says, don't panic, right? Like people look at crypto and blockchain and like, oh my God, it's so complicated, I'll never figure it out. I'm just going to buy Bitcoin and forget about it, right? So you have to just sort of, first thing is like just sort of be prepared, to have some patience with this thing, right? It takes everybody some time to get into it because even there's people that I'm sure Siddharth also knows, even in tech, folks who've been in it for years find it, difficult to grasp exactly how things work here. So I think you need to sort of immerse into what is in industry called the crypto native sort of ethos, right, to really understand how things work. And I think a second thing that I see a lot of people like not really doing is, this is, as Siddharth said, I think, he described it in great detail. And I would say in a nutshell that this is a new economy, right? It's a new economy altogether. So it has pretty much a need for every single service that you have in an economy, right? Whether it's service people or it's the core infrastructure providers or it's people who are making use cases or like applications or dApps as we call them, right? So there's room for everybody, right? Whether it's in communications or I think people need to sort of also merge their domain knowledge here, and I think that's something I don't see a lot of people do. Like if you were always strong in marketing, you don't necessarily need to become a trader, right? You can carve out a great career being a solid marketer in this ecosystem, right? If you're just a good designer, like you don't need to suddenly become a coder, right? You can be an NFT artist or something, right? So I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. I think it's just about finding a niche and then really going after it. And I think, as Siddharth said, bottleneck is really education in the space because till date, there's no standardized, very solid sort of a training module or something that really prepares you for everything here. It's not too hard to do, right? Like, I mean, if 15-year-olds are doing it, 13-year-olds are doing it, you can do it, right? Policy doesn't necessarily need to come in everywhere. Like sometimes policy or at least regulation comes in when things are more mature or they start becoming systemically important. And I think it's the same thing with policy. Of course, there are smaller, more targeted interventions you can do if you're setting up in Atal Innovation Mission, we have these tinkering labs, and we have certain dedicated labs for at least in robotics and AI, we have that, right? And there's some talk of maybe looking at things in blockchain, but it's not very necessary. I think the good thing about crypto and blockchain is that the market forces are working quite robustly in it. And ultimately, that's the aim of policy, is to make markets work without distortion, right? So they're
It's
already doing
6:30.
it. why do you want to intervene, right? So I think, yes, I mean, the states can sort of prepare infrastructure. Like I think Telangana government, did a great job in their state policy of, how can they set up a talent hub? What can they give as incentives to universities to train people? I think definitely there's a gap in the industry as far as talent and blockchain goes. So universities can definitely start setting up curriculums, but I think a lot of the training in this industry is industry-led, unfortunately. I mean, it's nowhere the case that universities are producing graduates in, in blockchain and crypto. Like a lot of it is driven by industry players and their community efforts. So I think, I think interested states can definitely set up, some targeted interventions around this, work with industry on it. But I think it's a bit early for like a national level sort of policy or something on it. I'm not sure how effective it would be, because just the talent pool itself is kind of small in India terms, right? So like how do you scale it up?
Yeah, Tanvi, you're absolutely right on the last part, especially, right? I've watched the Indian software services industry, and I think one of the best things that happened in terms of policy was that the government did nothing at the initial years, right? And that is really what helped boost some of these companies without any interference. I mean, they could just grow, right? So, Siddharth, my last question in this very interesting discussion we've had is to you. What do you look for in your candidates when you hire, right? And we've spoken about people who have to upskill, but also what about students, etc., right? Who are in engineering school or in management schools, who are very interested and want to make careers here, but like Tanvi pointed out, there are really no courses, etc. That's number one. How do they build some of the skills? And from as an entrepreneur, right? When you see this entire blockchain ecosystem today, how do you think the educational edtech ecosystem really needs to evolve to meet the demand, so that they can build or enable the skills that can meet the demand that y'all have and hire?
First of all, like I would want to extend a bit of what Tanvi said, right? Like, so we are talking about looking for a structured content or structured courses to learn about blockchain, which does not exist today, right? But it's far better than how it was probably in 2017 or 15, during that time. I remember me reading on different forums, I had to read others' comment to come to a conclusion of a concept that everybody's talking about. Everybody had different opinion, and it was very difficult to learn, understand what this is all about. But today, the contents are much more structured and still not there yet. But I think it's the process that we are talking about, where it's much more easier for a lot more folks to come on board. But again, since a lot of things is not written, a lot of things are not structured, and it's being explored as we talk about it, suggestions to not just to student, but also to entrepreneur, is to become a consumer of these product first, right? To actually practically use these products, right? So at this point, it's important to be more practical than more theoretical and just going by the books, because a lot of things are changing. It's an a student, like probably if we are talking about a student or who's into tech, or we are talking about an entrepreneur, once you start using these products, you understand at the first you have to understand how the product works. Then you'll probably go dive into it and say what it solves, and then slowly you understand how things work, and then you will have the right questions to ask and research on that, and there's a lot of content around that to solve those problems. And that's how you basically build out a skill for certain things. Even if it's students, I know there are folks like 15-year-old kids who are building good projects there, primarily not because they just read a book and started something, but primarily because they were involved in all these projects, trying to figure it out, and then say, hey, what, I can also build it, and they started building it out, right? And that's a very good way to start. And a good thing about the whole decentralized economy is most of these codes are open source, right? It's something that you can read up and understand what happens there. Now, this is about upskilling. How do you improve yourself with respect to learning, get into these job roles. But when we look for a new candidate, right, it's very important that we look for this particular skill of learning, right? We know everything else you can figure out, But if you have the right aptitude and the curiosity to explore new things and probably to build for new things, that's exactly what you need, right? Because you're in an uncharted territory where you don't have content, you don't have structures, you don't know, there is no right and wrong about how to do things. Certain codes that you write is for the first time somebody has solved certain problems, and it's first of a kind. So it becomes very challenging for everybody to try this out, and the guys who can do it are the guys who are curious, want to try new things, and can take that risk of doing all those things. And that's basically what we look forward to, right? Like with their previous experience to their current attitude toward current curiosity, if it all comes together into a nice package, you are the right person to be in the team. And that's how we want to do it, right? That's how, as a team, when you have more colleagues who are all into this and all curious about how to build the next big thing, you have a very cohesive force that's building actually something big together, innovative way. So I guess that's a very important point there, where learning is the most important point, and how to learn by itself is a skill, right? So when I had to learn, it's just the content is there but not structured, so you have to dig into multiple things trying to figure out. There was a forum called as Bitcoin Talk, which was quite famous back then, and we were all consuming content from there, reading each other's perspective and learning from each other. Today things are much more easier. There's so much YouTube content to even get started for you to start using a product, and then later dive into the technicality of things. So yeah, I think be the consumer first. I understand the problem first, and then from there on, start building on.
Absolutely. Tanvi, you wanted to add something to this?
Yeah, I think we also started recruiting recently, for some roles. I very much agree with Siddharth. People need to be able to learn, right? And I think one thing I see across the board in crypto, this is a very passionate tribe of people, right? Like we're all building for a mission. People have a certain vision of where they're going with this. And I think that sense of mission is also something that I've seen every person hiring looks for, right? Like, do you believe in what we're building, right? Like, do you believe in this product? Do you really see that? Like, because it's such an investment, like everyone you hire, because there's a long period of upskilling and everything, that you want people who are here for the long term. And I think that's true of all startups, but I find that sense of mission much more strong in crypto projects everywhere in the world.
Absolutely. I think we've had a really fascinating discussion here today. And I think we've obviously gone into the demand for blockchain applications, etc., and specifically into crypto. We've looked at the entire ecosystem that's really getting built up over here. We've looked at the kind of jobs that are there in this entirely new industry that's coming up. We've talked about how people are upskilling themselves. We've also talked about how people could really upskill themselves. We looked at new models of compensation, etc. And I think we finally come down to what people should really do, and in order to meet, I think Sid put it very well, the kind of people who are necessary. And again, you also, Tanvi, I think you brought it very clearly, passion and mission. I think those are very important. But I think most importantly, I think as Sid put it, people need to try this out first, right? I mean, and only then they really begin to. It's not just about having coding skills or compliance skills, etc. But when you become part of this mission, when you realize that this is not just about just another tech product, but about really transforming the world, I think that's when you really jump on this bandwagon, and that's when we realize that crypto can really boost job creation in India. So thank you so much, Sid. So we just had Siddharth Menon, co-founder and Chief Operating Officer at WazirX, and Tanvi Ratna, who's the founder and CEO of Policy 4.0. Thank you so much for the insights that you brought through this discussion, to all the valuable advice that you have for the people out there listening who want to make careers in crypto and blockchain.
Thank you, Amor.
Thanks.
This was a great discussion. Thank you.
Same here. It was a great discussion.